Tell me a little bit about your childhood. When and where were you born?
I was born up at my grandmother Sharp's house in Cub River, Idaho, in the basement. And that's where I was born, Cub River, Idaho.
And how many siblings do you have?
Oh, we have 10 children, living children. One died, so we had 11. But there's exactly even, 5 boys, 5 girls.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was the third from the oldest. Yep.
So were you in charge of all the other kids a lot? Did you have to help raise the kids?
No, I didn't help raise my siblings. We had my brother. He was a year older than me, and then a younger brother that was the 6th one in the family. And that's the only boys we had for a long time. And the mother didn't have children again for quite a while. But then when she did, she popped out all these boys and 1 girl. So that's my family. Yeah, there was 10 of us living together. And I got married when my little sister was only 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
That was the difference between the young, we call it the older family, 6 of us, and the younger family, the older family, the younger family and the older family. But that's because there's quite a difference in years between the old family and the young family. So that's my family.
What's your full name, and do you know why you were given your name?
Yes, I do. My name is Alta Sharp. I was named after my grandmother Sharp because I was born on her birthday.
What did you like to do with your family?
We were farmers. We lived on a farm. We had very few neighbors close to us, but we played as a family. We done everything as a family. And we saw our neighbors and our friends only on church Sunday, when we'd all go to church and see the neighbors. Sunday was about the only time we had free time to play on the farm. We were always doing farm work. And so Sunday was our day to have some free time. My fun thing I loved to do when I wasn't very old, I was probably 7 or 8, I would go out and saddle a horse. Actually, I rode bareback most of the time. I would go and get the horse and put his bridle on, jump on, and head for the hills. I didn't care where he took me. He just took me up in the hills. The first time I went up like that, I turned around and I didn't know my way home. And I didn't know what to do because I was way up in the hills. And a thought came into me, giving me his reins, pat his neck, tell him to go home. And I did. He whipped around and he took me all the way home. And I also found out cattle do that. I'd have to go up and herd the cows when the fall grain and everything was taken off, and then we'd take them to the hills to eat until the snow came to save on hay. And it was interesting because if I got lost, well, I'll tell you the one time I really got lost. I didn't feel good a lot in my life, and I was not feeling well, so I laid down after we got up in the hills, and I went sound asleep. I was asleep quite a while. I woke up, no cows. I didn't even know where to look for them. And that's when I learned about Heavenly Father. Truly. I knelt down and I says, I don't know where I am. I don't know what to do. And I just felt calm and peaceful. And the thoughts came into my mind, stand up and walk. And I did. I went over 2 ridges of hills and found the cows. So then I walked down to the cows and turned them around, and they led me home. Animals are very intelligent if you let them be. But that was my story on my younger years when I would have to herd the cows up in the field by myself.
So what was a typical day like for you growing up?
as long as I can remember, from the time I was probably 6, 7 years old, I would have chores to do outside. My older sister was scared to death of anything outside, so she was Mother's housekeeper. And then there was my brother and me, so it didn't bother me to go outside. I loved to go outside with my brother and do things. He'd done fun things. We jumped on the calves and rode the calves. We'd done everything we'd like to do. I mean, just play. We had to get our work done, but we had a few things that we'd take time to play too. And we had a good time together doing that as young children. We played together as a family.
Good.
My dad was a farmer, and he was building our house. He started building our house. We moved into Winder when I was about 3 years old. And it was a 2-room house with them. By the time, well, there was 6 children in that house at that time, but we all had a bedroom. And Mom and Dad had the kitchen area for their bedroom. But we had a bathroom that was called the outhouse. And in the winter, we always had a chamber pot where we all knew where it was. We'd go use that in the cold winter. But in the summers, we had to run outside in the dark and back. That didn't bother me. There was always something out there. There was, animals moving around, and we was used to that. It was no problem. Anyway, it didn't bother me. But I had sisters that was scared of everything, so they didn't work outside at all. I was the only. Then I got to be known as the tomboy, because I could do everything a boy could do, and I loved every minute of it. And so I got a doll for Christmas, a homemade doll that Grandma made for us. And I put it on a shelf and looked at it, and I'd go outside and play. I loved being outside to play. I was free. I could go anywhere and be myself. We had chickens and pigs and cattle that we milked all the time. And so, yes, I was taught to milk cows by hand. And Robert and I would go out and help Dad in the morning and at night, and we would milk the cows. And then we would feed the chickens and the pigs in the morning and do the same thing again at night. That was my life. It was a wonderful life. I liked being outside. I had my freedom to do whatever I wanted.
Tell me about your baptism. What do you remember about that?
Yes, it was a special day. I remember waking up on my baptismal day, and I was so excited. I was baptized on my grandmother's and my birthday, January 4th. And it was an interesting day. My mom and Dad, we got ready out on the farm, and we went into the church, the only church in Preston that had a baptismal font. We'd seen it before, but I'd never really encountered it. But we went there, and we were called in order of our names. There was 3 or 4 of us getting baptized that day. And so Mom and Dad was there. I remember them being there, and I was there waiting to be called in. And we changed our clothes into white clothes, and we were baptized in our white clothes.
When was the first time you knew God was real?
When I was up in the field with the cows, and they got away from me the first time. Maybe it was, no, I'm not sure. I've been up with the cows quite a bit, but this one day, I didn't feel good at all, and I laid down and slept for I don't know how long. We didn't have time clocks to tell us. And it was starting to get dark, and I woke up, and I thought it can't be nighttime. And I got very frightened. So I just started praying, and I felt calm, and I've had this feeling before. And that's something that I've treasured all my life. When I get sick, joy to when I get sick, I can pray and I can feel relaxed. Now you want to turn it off. I was losing it. And she walked in and I was bawling. I usually don't do that, but I was bawling and I was sobbing and I couldn't get control of myself. I said, and I had appointment after appointment and I couldn't keep them straight. It was driving me nuts because I had 2 appointments one day somewhere and 3 another day, and yeah, I lost it. And she says, well, Mother, I'll figure it out for you. So she lays it all out and got it all figured out. And she says, Mother, when we go to the doctor today, Mother, you're under too much pressure. You don't need that right now. She says, I'm going to have them transfer all the information that they need to talk to you about to my number. I will take it and contact you and let you know what we're doing that day. That's what she called for. We have appointments tomorrow. And she says, so how would you feel if I took charge of your life that way? And I says, you can have it. So she's been taking charge of my life for 2 months, doing a good job. Every time I have to go anywhere, she calls me and tells me to be there at such and such a time. And they all take turns. I think your dad told you. They all take turns. Your dad gets hit more than anybody. Because if something happens, and he's taken me that week somewhere and stayed with me, and then I get a call without knowing that I should have been somewhere else. He's just right there to take me. I call and say, Doug, I've got to get to this appointment today at such and such. I'll be there, and then away we go. And they're so good to me. I couldn't live without them. Anyway.
Well, you've taken good care of them.
Yeah,
So.
I hope so. Yeah, I loved my kids. They were my life.
Yeah. What's the most difficult thing about being a parent? And what's the best thing?
The best thing is having children that love you and you can love them. What was the other question?
What's the most difficult?
The most difficult is watching them grow up and become independent. And you have to let go of that independence and let them be independent. And I learned that with Todd. He was my experimental child. And with him I learned that you have to be more tolerant. I expected him to be the perfect child. He always was the perfect child. But as each one come along, you kind of let them have more independence quickly. And I'm sure in your family you felt that. Maybe not. But with each child you become a little bit more lenient and understanding. And that's what it was with my family. I had to learn by trial and error with children. But I always tried to let them know I loved them. What else to say?
Tell me about your kids. What were they like growing up?
They were normal children. They wanted all their freedom, but they didn't get it all the time. Just like kids. But I tried really hard when I disciplined them to let them know I love you so much, but you need to learn some of these things. And I feel like I've got some good kids, really good kids. And I don't know if it was my teaching, but their father was the same. We had a big time problem though when he come into Utah. He started going out of town. He worked for the Geological Survey and went out of town 2 weeks out of every month since we were married and lived here. The kids were quite young, but he loved his job, and he done the Bear River flows from Wyoming, Utah, and Idaho into 3 states, and he'd be gone 2 weeks out of every month. But So he was home every other week. But the time he came home, he would spend time with the kids and the boys. And if honey season was on, he would take them kids and away they would go. And if it wasn't, they would go and do other things and enjoy one another. They had their dad, they had me, and we was on the same page. We had the biggest fight trying to figure out, you can't come home and let the kids do what they want. I'm the boss here. Oh dear, it took a while, but we both come to the conclusion, I agree, because I notice that they come and want to do things that I think that you've told them no, and I tell them yes. So they're just in between us all, and they know who to go to get what they want. So he straightened that out with us, and he said, what I'll do is they'll come to me, and I will tell them, go ask your mother. And that's the way we've lived our whole life. But it caused a lot of happiness in our life because we weren't conflicting with each other. How's that?
So
They're all in my family. And Chris was only 3 years old, 4 years old when Doug left on his mission. And yeah, my kids were spread out kind of far. But I have them, and I love each one of them, and I love them for who they are. Chris came to me so upset. You know, she'd been married once before. And she come to me after and says, Mother, the thing I've gone out in college is to go down like to Sunshine Terrace and be a supervisor or something. But she says, I checked into it. And she says, you know, if I'm going to live alone the rest of my life, she wasn't going to get married again. If I'm going to live alone the rest of my life, I've got to get a better job and support myself. And I says, well, what do you want to do? She says, I need to go back to college and get a degree of some kind. She already had her one degree, but she had it in something else. But she went back and she didn't know what to go in. She says, this is what I always thought I'd be, as working in a place like this, because I love people, and I love old people. But I says, Chris, go up and take the test and see what you qualify for what you have. I understand these tests they give now are really good to help people point them in the way they could go. And she did, and she come home and says, that was interesting. She said, and there's a name for it. She went out in communication something or other, and that's what she scored high in. But she's loved every job she's had since. She does. She gets up and she can give people their, I don't know if she was a presenter, if she done everything. But when she first got a job, she went for Ernst & Young and traveled the world, working for him as a leader. And she loved that job too. But then she met Dave and got married, and after a year of being alone, almost all year, Dave told her, you got to get a different job. So then she decided she had to get a job to be home more. And she did. She was married again. And he knew that Dave was not a Mormon, but he's the sweetest thing to her. I couldn't ask for a better husband than he's been to her. And she loves him dearly.
How did you meet Grandpa?
Oh dear, okay. Well, I was in my senior year in high school, and my dad came to me, and my brother had just left to go on a mission to Canada. And my dad comes and says, Alda, can you go to Preston and get a job? We need extra money to keep him on his mission. And I said, sure, Dad. So I came in and applied into Preston, Idaho, a little town. And I was lucky. I got on right after Christmas at the pharmacy. At the pharmacies then, they had one pharmacy store. Everybody used the same one in Preston. And they had a counter bar for people to come in and eat sandwiches and different things all day. And so I got to work behind the counter there in the pharmacy and serve people lunch. And after school started, then he had me come in after school and work until about 9 o'clock. And that was okay. But I wanted to graduate from high school. I really wanted to always go to college too, but I never made it. But I wanted to graduate from high school bad enough. I went to all my teachers and I told them what was happening in my life and that I needed to work. And could I come after school after I got through? I worked from 10 to 2 and then back to work from 6 to 10 at night at the telephone company. So I would go between 2 and 6, well, 2 and before the teachers left to go home, and get all my assignments, and I would do them, and the next day I'd hand them in. And so I was able to keep up with my schooling and be able to graduate with my class in the spring. That's what I did.
Wow. So did you meet Grandpa when you were at your job?
I did. After I became a telephone operator, it was not right away. I had worked there over a year, and I met Judy, his sister, that was a friend. She was about three years younger than I was. But she come uptown. Her mother worked at one of the stores. She was in the clothing department of the women's clothing. And she'd come up to see her mom and sometimes help her mom put things away and stuff. And we met and became very good friends. And she'd always come over to see me and walk to work with me at 6 o'clock. We didn't live very far away from them. We lived 3 blocks from where she lived with her parents, and I lived with my grandmother to walk to work. And she'd come over quite often. We became very good friends. And, well, one night, after I got off work one night, this car pulled up, and I didn't recognize it. And in Preston, you recognize every car when you're walking alone all the time. And I didn't recognize the car, but then Judy jumped out. She called me, "Allie, it's me. Oh, what you doing? What car are you in?" "Oh, that's my brother. He's been in California for 2 years. He's only 2 years older, but he had gone to California to work right out of high school." And so she jumps out of the car and says, "Come on, we'll take you home in our car." "Okay, I'm for that." It was about a 6-block walk late at night. And so we got in the car and I met her brother, Bruce. He was the most quiet guy I'd ever been around. But, so anyway, I met him, and then, golly, about every 2 days or something, when I'd get off work, they'd be out there waiting for me to take me home to my grandmother's. They were just up around the block where they lived. But I got to know him a little bit, and then one day he took a hold of my hand when Judy wasn't in the car with me, and I thought, "Oh, how dare you." I was a stubborn person. I hadn't gone on many dates anyway. I went on my first date my junior year.
Okay, we were talking about, you were telling me about Grandpa, how you met him.
Oh, I
You
met
said
him.
that he held your hand in the car, right?
He held my hand in the car. He did. And Judy wasn't with us that night. And he looked at me. He took my hand and says, "Look at me." Okay. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he was so kind and gentle, and he said, "Do you know, I finally found the girl I want to marry. I want to marry you in a year." I'd only seen him how many times? 3 or 4. I thought it was crazy. You don't know the reply. "I don't think you've looked long enough for one thing." And I don't know what all I told him, but he just sat there and smiled and said, "I've been looking for a while, so I know what I want." All the time.
So how did Grandpa win you over?
He was very slow, very tender. He never pushed me. And I've looked back on it a few times wondering, when did I really start liking this guy? Because I had gone out, I hadn't been on a lot of dates. I didn't date in high school hardly at all because we was out on the farm, and farm girls didn't get asked out on dates. But he just won me over slowly. And one day I realized I really do like him. I like his personality. I like the way he is. And after I married him, I realized how much he loved our kids. And he took the boy. I want to tell you about the fishing trip that he took my kids on. Opening day of fishing season was a big thing to my family, my husband and my children. They grew up with it all their lives. It was a big thing. And so every opening day they would go to the canyon, be ready to be on the first day of hunting season. Well, he also took them fishing all the time. We got a pickup truck, and the kids loved, back then they could ride in the back. They loved to ride in the back. And Bruce and them would take off and go, and after he got off work, they would take off and go up fishing. And sometimes they stayed all night, sometimes they'd come home. And so opening day of fishing season, he had a friend that wanted to go. So, yeah, he got to go. Go talk to your dad, make sure it's okay, you go fishing with us, and you're going to get muddy and wet. He was a city kid. And anyway, one year we had one go. The next time they went fishing, they had 3 or 4 more boys turn up and want to go. The next time there was opening day of fishing season, there was 12 kids show up for him to take fishing on opening day of fishing season. And he was putting them all in the truck, getting them all ready, and I looked at him and I says, everybody put their fishing pole in but you. What, aren't you going to fish? Who has time, he said. All I do is untangle their lines. And he was good-natured about it. He was, the kids loved to go fishing and go places with our children. We always had kids at our house. They always wanted to go. They had to go get permission from their family to do it. But we always were crowded with kids all over the place. We loved it. It was a good time. I knew where my children was. I knew what they were doing, and they were having fun. That was important to me.
Good.
That's how they were raised.
Did you like golfing with Grandpa?
I loved golfing with Grandpa. But I didn't take the game serious enough for Grandpa. He was a serious golfer. Other than with the kids, he was much better with them than me. Alda, I showed you that 100 times. You hold your hands wrong. If you held your hands right, you could swing that club and hit it straight. Okay. And I would smile and say, I'll try again. But then Joanne, Mark and Joanne lived together. That's Bruce's sister, Joanne, that lived in Preston. And Mark died. And so then Bruce decided it's more fun to golf with Joanne, my sister, than you because you don't take the game serious. I looked at him and said, I know. That's why I go golfing with Susan and you go with Larry. Her husband. They were serious golfers. We were play golfers. Anyway, so that's how we ended up golfing. And then him and Joanne got it going on the championship playoffs. And Bruce would win every time, first or second place. He'd get, and now he's not he was a golfer, but he's not a pro golfer. So they get gifts, nice gifts. They win so much money that at the clubhouse they're at, they went to all the Pocatello. They went all over him and Joanne. And what they did was they gave him so much money in the clubhouse. If you won first place, you have a first place winner in the clubhouse but you have to buy your stuff from there. So he would go in. I've never seen a man with so many shirts before in my life. Finally, I says, you better get shirts for the kids. And he started buying shirts for the kids. But that was interesting. But he enjoyed doing that, him and Joanne. She was very serious about golfing too, but all the Garretts were very, all but Judy. I loved golfing with Judy. That's the youngest girl after Bruce. Judy was the youngest girl. I loved golfing with Judy. We golfed the same. We could laugh about hitting it wrong. We could laugh about everything. But when you're with these other guys, you don't laugh. It's serious. Oh, anyway, life goes on. Isn't it funny?
Happy baby on the floor.
Yes, he'd become a very happy baby after he got better. Well, he got feeling better, and we had him on good medicine that he could breathe and do things. But here he was one day. I was just sitting there in the living room, and he was out playing. And the next thing I knew, I looked up and he was walking to me. He never did crawl, that I know of. But he got up off the floor and walked to me. It blew me away, completely away. I knew I had my little boy and he was well. He got better. But it was a tough ride with him. But he's always been a very kind, loving, gentle guy. From the time he was little, growing up, if the kids got in an argument or fight, who backed away first? Your dad. He would back away and say, I'm not here, I'm not doing this. And he would back away from it. And I appreciated his personality for that, because he was, he had to stand up to Todd, and Randy was there by then, and it was kind of an interesting life. But he was always kind and nice. He was never a mean person at all. I loved your dad. Praise Spirit. I still do. He's got the need of, I love being with him. He makes me feel calm, happy, and we can talk about anything. That's your dad.
In what ways is he like you?
He doesn't have my temperament, which is a good thing. But when he sets his mind to something, you can't change it. And so I would say, he's a little bit like me. When I make up my mind, you don't change my mind on things. I'm pretty stern about it, and I want my own way.
In what way is he different than you?
I think he has a personality to be more understanding about people. He loves being around people. When he started to go to school, I don't know, he decided Todd was going to be an engineer. That's all he thought about. Douglas decided he'd try engineering, and he did. And one day he come home and he's told his dad, Dad, I don't think I want to be an engineer. And his dad and I always sat down and he talked to us about it. And Bruce was, I let Bruce talk to his children a lot. He had more understanding and kindness. And he just said, I can understand that. You're in the wrong field. He says, you're a social person. Engineers are straight-lined. They don't bounce back and forth. He says, why don't you go and find something you like and go for it? Anything you decide is fine with us. You don't have to be an engineer. But their dad was always very intelligent. He helped all these kids in all their math, everything. He was good at the way he taught. He would say, okay, I can see where your mistake is, but you got to go back at the beginning, because that's where you're mixing up, because you're not following through right. And he showed them, and all of our children that has stuck with that field, they're outstanding in their work ethics and everything. Todd and Randy both do really well in engineering, but they understand because Randy started working in California, and he said, how did you like your new job? And he said, well, I get these students right out of college that know all about engineering, and they don't know how to work with their hands. He says, so what do? They hire me to go in there and teach those kids how to work, because an engineer has to work with all they work with their brain, their everything. They just don't work on the computers and have it done. And yeah, that's your dad.
What's one thing you like to do with him?
Dad? I like being with him all the time. He's a very gentle person, and he loves to tell me about everything they do and the fun things they have. Fun things. He always liked fun things, and he's never changed. He likes to make sure everybody's happy, as you notice that. And he likes to do things with the grandkids. He loves his grandkids like nobody I know. But I admire him for who he is and what he is. Each one of my boys are different, and I love them for who they are and what they accomplish and what they give to their families.
Do you have a memory of him when he was younger, growing up with you? A fond memory?
Oh, yes.
That always stands out? Or?
So many fond memories. He was one little boy that would go to bed at night and come crawl in bed, Mommy, can I lay by you? I loved that. I loved him to come in and lay by me. He laid as quiet as a mouse, and then would get up and put him back in his own bed. And then as he grew up, he was always a kind person. I don't remember him being a fighting person, causing problems. He would go along with whatever until it reached a certain point, and then he wouldn't go with it. No, your dad was he still is, I think, very understanding about a lot of things. Very happy. I think he's always been the happiest job I had. And I love him dearly.
We know that, yep. What about Christmas? What's the first Christmas you remember? Long time ago.
A long time ago. I remember we moved into our little old house, two-room house. It had a kitchen and a bedroom. Us kids were putting in the bedroom. I think I told you that earlier about our house. And anyway, what was the question again?
Your first Christmas that you remember.
I must have been maybe 3, 4 years old. I remember watching out the window at Christmas Eve. My dad had gone to town. My dad and Mom had gone to town, and we were waiting, watching out the window. I mean, we didn't have TVs and everything you have now. We just was ourselves. But when they would go and it'd get dark, we would start watching out the window for the lights to come up the road so we knew Mom and Dad was coming home. And I remember them coming in the house, and they were both happy. And they had bags, but we weren't allowed to look in them. But then Dad had gone out and done the chores, and when he come in, he says, now everybody, don't go to bed early tonight. You can stay up later. And he says, we're going to sit around the fire and have fun. Fun? Okay. Sit around the fire. We did that every night. Couldn't remember having a lot of fun, but we loved to cuddle. But I remember, I wasn't very old. I must have been 4, maybe 5 at the most. But we all sat down. We all got in our little positions and sat around the fire. He took the lids off the coal-burning stoves, and he says, I brought peanuts. We're going to sit and crack peanuts and eat peanuts, but you're to throw your peanut shells into the fire. We did that all night long. We did that for a long time. And we had so much fun. I remember that night being the most fun time because we were all sitting around the fire doing the same thing, laughing, joking, and then once in a while they'd say, "It's time to go to bed, children. Santa will soon be here." But we couldn't go to bed. They let us stay up later, and then they finally put us to bed, and then Santa came the next morning. We lived on the farm. They had very little money. We were in depression at that time when I was little, so nobody had money. They had food. Farmers had food that we shared with everybody that needed it. They did the same thing. If you ran out of something, you would go to your neighbor. If they had it, they shared, and vice versa. And people didn't have money back then when that was going on. And I remember I got a rag doll, and I set it on the shelf. I never played with dolls much. I set it on the shelf, and that's what I got for Christmas that year. And everybody got one present that was handmade by Mom or Dad or Grandma or somebody. And that's what we got for Christmas that year, but it was the most fun Christmas we ever had. Christmas morning we woke up and we played with each other, and we just enjoyed being a family. And we'd talk about things. What more can you ask than to have a family that can talk to each other and enjoy life? That's what we did.
Did you have a Christmas tree?
Yes, we always had a Christmas tree. Sometimes it was a pine tree out of the fields. Sometimes you could find a Christmas tree. Out where we were, there weren't many Christmas trees, but they had pine trees. Now, have you ever been around a pine tree in a house? The pine is so strong, right after you bring it in the house, you can hardly breathe. But we loved our trees. We would decorate them. We had to make our own ornaments to put on the tree. It was always out of paper stuff. And we'd make our own ornaments and hang them on the tree. That's how we lived. That's when I was young, growing up.
Did you have stockings?
Yes. We had the stockings we wore on our legs to school. But Mother made sure they were clean, and she'd lay them out and say, "Pick out your sock and hang it up." And we did. And it was always filled with candy. No toys. We never got toys. But we always had lots of candy, half full. I mean, you think about that big long sock. It was half full of candy. We thought it was a treat for the whole year. Yeah, we enjoyed it. We had no idea we even lived poorly. We didn't miss out on that part, I guess, because we always felt like we had everything we needed on the farm. We never ever went hungry. Our neighbors, if they needed something, they could have anything we had, and vice versa. We had good neighbors. And growing up, I realized as I got older, the neighbors all changed. We don't have neighbors like old neighbors, like I had, like we had when we grew up. And we cared for each other. Usually on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, some of the neighbors would get in their car and go around to make sure that we were okay and that we'd had a nice Christmas. But they don't do that anymore either. They go Christmas caroling in town, but not out on the farms. But yeah, we had a few neighbors that would get in their cars and go around and make sure everybody was okay. So that's what I remember about my Christmases.
Do you remember what present your parents made you?
Oh, I had a rag doll. That's the first one I really remember. It was a homemade rag doll, and we knew it was a homemade rag doll. We'd go into Grandma Augers, and she was making a whole bunch of rag dolls. "Grandma, what's all this for?" "Oh, it's for Christmas." And then when we got one, we knew that Grandma had made it for us for Christmas. That was what we got for Christmas. People had no money back then when I was little. It was the Depression, and we had food, which we were very fortunate to have. We had people that would come from in town out to see if we had any food to spare for them. And we always shared. Everybody shared back then. They didn't let anybody go hungry. We didn't have money to give them, but we had food and things that was what we could live on.
Did you have any other family traditions?
Well, as we grew older, we used to make our own decorations for Christmas. We had an old, we had a furnace in our house, and it burnt coal. I don't know if you've ever been familiar with the furnaces that used to burn coal. They go into a big hard lump. We'd take these lumps and we would save these lumps of coal. It wasn't coal. The coal would burn off. It was just the shell of the burn-off stuff. And we would take those and we'd save them for Christmas, and then we would get some cans of spray, white paint, and we'd make it look like that the snow had fell on all these, and we made it was a great big dresser, and we made it all a Christmas scene. Santa Claus was on the top flying over with the reindeers. We went to town and bought the little ornaments to go on that little, we called it the little clinker tail. And we had that for years in our house. And we were so always excited to be able to put it up. I think we were probably the last family in Winder to ever use that. But we loved our clinker towns. And we made it every year for years. That was one of our Christmas things that we did. Something different.
Yeah.
Very different.
What's the real meaning of Christmas to you?
Family. You knew I was going to say that. Family. And it's important to be together as a family. We went back to my mother's for Christmas for years. My boys were quite old when we were still doing it. She had every one of us that lived close enough to come home for Christmas. And with all of us having children and packed in, we'd take sleeping bags, put them on the floor. They were lined up all over the living room floor in sleeping bags. But we loved it. They played. We just enjoyed being together as a family. I think Christmas is for families. That's just how I feel. I think you draw closer, doing things together all the time. And then the memories you have is special. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
It's very special. The good memories of being together, special. We didn't have a lot of toys, but we were smart. We would decide, we went to town, we saw this game. We're going to cut out this and this and this and make us a game. We were always making some kind of a game to play with. And we all finally agreed on the rules once in a while. And that's a lot of the things we had was homemade games, things like that. We didn't have bought things on the farm. And it was a blessing to all of us, I think, that we could do things like that. And we've never been a family that thinks that they should have more than someone else and vice versa. Whatever we bought our kids for Christmas was for them and nobody else, so it didn't matter. We felt like that, but we felt like that as children. Christmas was special because it was a special day. It wasn't what you got for Christmas. But life is changing very fast now. And families are different. But we need to remember and think back on when you first was little. Because when you first get married, you don't have a lot of money. And you get by on what you can. And everybody's happy. As you get older, you want more and more. Nowadays, you can have anything you want. Go to town and buy it.
Did you want to tell us about your kidney surgery? When you had your kidney removed? And
yes, I can tell you about that. Oh, dear, yes. When they told me, Dr. Larson here in Logan, it was his dad that done my original surgery. But before I had it, I was in the hospital almost every day for 2 weeks. Being examined for something or other constantly. And they knew what they were going in for, but they had no idea when they got in there that it was so messed up. I had this kidney that was completely surrounded by all the what do you call it?
Scar tissue?
No, the veins. All the veins was around correctly, but it also went up into this other kidney that sat up here like a ball. And it was called, they called it, the name the doctor told me to remember it by was piggyback kidney, but there is a name for that kind of kidney because not many people have those. And what it would do is it would sit here and it would suck the fluid from my kidney instead of releasing it out like it should. It would suck it up and hold it in this bag until it got full. Then it would release in my body and cause infection all through my body. And as I got older and older, it got worse till I was almost down every week, sick, couldn't move. And I found out there was a new urologist that had come to Logan, which was Dr. Larson. So I came to Logan. I was living in Logan, or was I? Yes. When I first met him, I was still living in Logan. I found out about him. My friend called. She was so excited. She ran to my house and said, "There's a new urologist in town. You need to go to him and find out if he can help you." And so I took his name and number, and I thought about it for about 2 days, and then I got sick, and I thought, someone's got to help me. I'm going to die. And so I made an appointment and went into him. He had never seen anybody like me before in his whole life. When he was in school, he said we had them bring in things to show us how it was, and pieces out of people that donated their organs to science. And he said, I saw some of this in my when I was learning about it, but I've never done any of this myself. He says, I'm hesitant, but I know what you've got. You've got a full kidney and a half kidney that only sucks fluid up and releases it. And he says, then they put me in and tested to see where the veins would go. And he says, we're going to have to take it all out at the same time because the veins go around the whole thing itself. If it was just going around the lower and then the upper, we could leave your kidney, but we can't. We're going to have to take it off. And they checked everything out and put me in the operating room and took it all out. And I did feel, it took me about 5 years to get over that surgery. I struggled to live. I had children, I had to live. Do you know why I lived so long? Because I was their mother. No mother could love my children like I did. That was what I lived on. And yeah, anyway, I had my kidney out. And it took me about 5 years, but I got feeling good a lot. I had a lot of kidney infections still. That's never gone away my whole lifetime. But they come, and I could go to the doctor and get a certain pill, and it would help me and get me through it. And that's how I've lived my life. Most of my life is on a pill, off and on.
And you died on the operating table, though.
I did.
On that surgery.
Oh, I did. I missed that part, didn't I? Yeah, that was interesting. Yes, I remember them putting me under and wheeling me down the hall. And that's all I remember. The next thing I knew, I woke up. And I was up above looking at my body, and someone was holding me. And they were talking about fishing. Do you know, that hit my brain? And it made me mad. They said I screamed, how dare they be fishing when they're operating on me? Dr. Larson told me about it later. I was so embarrassed. How would I dare do that? But anyway, I saw them operating on me. But then something happened, and the doctor, I remember hearing Dr. Larson's voice. I got to know him very well. And he said, "Hey, guys, knock it off. We've got to close her immediately. She's dying." And boom, I was back in my body, not knowing anything for 3 days. And I actually lived. I couldn't believe. I woke up and I thought I was dead, and I wasn't. I hurt bad enough to be dead. I'll tell you that. I hurt bad enough that I thought I was dead. But he pulled me through a lot. And you know, I want to tell you about that doctor. My doctor. If I got sick and it hit me like that, which it usually does, it hits you fast, I could call him after I'd had surgery for a while, quite a while, and I was still having problems. I could call him. He said, "I'll meet you at the door." No doctor meets you at the door. I would get there driving. I had to go from my house on 5th, and I had to drive into his office on 2nd, where Gary Foster is now. That's where his office was. And he would meet me at the door. His office was full of patients, and he's taken me in. He says, "I knew you'd be hurting. I thought I'd hurry and get you in my room." And he took care of me in his room. And every time I call for a long time, he'd say, "I'll meet you at the door." And I would go, he'd grab me, take me in, and doctor me and give me what I needed, and say, "Now you sit here for a while. I'm going to go take care of a patient and come back and see how you're doing, because you can't go home till you can drive." And he would come back in, and I'd get up and go home. He took such good care of me. I've always liked him. So when I come back here, I knew his son was going to be a doctor also. And I asked around, and Linda says, "I think there's a Ryan. I think there's a Ryan, that his son." And he went on in the same field as his dad. I says, "I think he was in high school when I went in to meet this high school kid. He was an old man." But he was so good. And when I went in, they told me, "Oh, we're sorry, but we're full. We're not accepting new patients here." And I says, "Okay, that's fine." And then I don't know what made that girl say what she did, but she jumped out of the chair and says, "Can I ask what your name is?" And I told her, "Alta Garrett. Don't leave. I've got to go talk to the doctor." I was in his office at 4 o'clock that day, and he's taken care of me since. Is that a miracle? I've got some good doctors. Very good doctors, but they've been so good to me. And they always have been. In fact, he told me, "It's not all your kidney, but you've got other problems that we got to find. But I can't do it. I have to send you somewhere else," because he's just the urologist. He just does the kidney. And so here I've been to how many doctors? 6, 7 doctors. They knew nothing about the kidney, but they wanted to know all about my body and how it was wrong. They were quite surprised that when I went to them that I didn't have tons of problems. It wasn't, they thought I would have problems everywhere in my body, and I didn't. Well, I have a few problems you get when you get older, but yeah, I couldn't believe they sent me to all those doctors. But anyway, Dr. Larson's still my doctor, and he's the one that kept researching my negatives on my kidney, and he kept looking at him. He's the one that says, "You have more than one cancer." What happened is the kidney up here, it's supposed to be laying so that you can see it. Well, I've had too many things in my stomach, people playing around so much that for some reason it was tilted. And so where they should have been seeing where I had cancer in my kidney, it was half hidden and they could just see a sliver of it. Couldn't figure it out. I come here and started going to the doctor over a year, and finally they found it. not too long ago. But they decided, Dr. Larson's the one that kept digging at it, and he got the he's the urologist, and then he got Dr. Stones. He's out of town a lot, and he says, I'm out of town a lot, and when you need help, you need to get to a doctor. So he had me choose another doctor, and I chose Dr. Stones, and I went into him, and he'll take me. So, and I guess him and Dr. Larson are friends. He wouldn't tell me who to go to, but that's who I chose. I called Linda and said, what doctor do I go to? She said, Dr. Stones. So I called, and come to find out, they're very good friends. And they have done nothing but correspond back and forth as doctors. And then I have my kidney doctor now. That's where I am in my life. I'm still here wondering, okay, now what? What new thing can I try, or shall I get out of this world?
Race car driver.
I loved race carsing, race car driving. My siblings hated driving with me because I loved to go 80. Back then the speed limit was, what, 50? I was a fast driver. I loved to get on the road and just tear.
Did you ever get on the freeway going in the wrong direction?
No.
No?
That's one thing. Well, back then when I was learning to drive, we didn't have all that. Until I moved to Salt Lake and I come home, and then I went back to Salt Lake. We would decide to go shopping in Salt Lake. That was silly. Because in the meantime, there was all that construction going on. Every other road was a one-way. I did get on one once. I barely turned and realized, cars are coming at me. I stopped right where I was, backed up and got on the right road. I did. Once I did get on the wrong road, but that was by accident. I had no idea the roads had changed. But yeah, it was interesting. Time's kind of passed me by in the last little while.
What's the funnest place you've ever visited?
Oh, I went on a lot of trips to Europe. Did you know that? I've been on, what, 1, 2, 3, 12 out of country visits. I love Susan and Bruce, and I took him when he retired. I took Bruce on a cruise that we stayed in the U.S., down the Caribbean, whatever. Anyway, he didn't like boats. He didn't like to be out on the water. I knew that, but I thought this will be fun. Do you know what? That guy enjoyed it more than I did, and I loved every minute of it. So we come home, and I says, do you want to go on another trip? And he says, yeah, book it on for me. I'll be there. And he did. But the first trip that I gave him for his retirement party, he called Doug and says, you better show up with your mom, because in case I don't go on that trip with her, you can go. Doug showed up very disappointed. Bruce walked in and says, I'm going. Doug looked at me, Mom. But he accepted it. I took Bruce instead of Doug. But I did. I called Doug and says, your dad called. He says, not going. I got the tickets. Do you want to go? Yeah, Mom, I'll be there. But then he was disappointed. Too bad. But we did have a fun time. And Susan and Larry, my sister and her husband, the first trip we went on, they wanted to go too, so they booked on the same ship we were. And we had our compartments almost together. Well, I think we had, what, 3 doors down, and we were there. But we always did that. So Bruce and I went on 3 cruises together. I couldn't believe he fell in love with them, but he did. And he loved looking at all the different countries we went into. But then he got sick, and we moved back to Logan. He retired. Well, he retired the first time we went. But we finally got moved back to Logan, and he got so sick. And then, but he lived a happy life being sick. You know, when we were in Salt Lake Hospital with him, they told us that he would only live maybe 3 months. And they wanted to put him upstairs in the hospital room and keep him there. And he took my hand and says, please, honey, don't put me in here. Please take me home. And I says, okay. Well, little did I know I had to get hospice in to help me know how to take care of him. I had to keep records constantly of everything he did. I had no idea nurses went through so much. But it was, he was easy because he would get kind of upset, and then he'd look at me and, oh, I'm upset at you. I'm upset, huh? Yeah, you are. I promise. And he'd start laughing, laugh and laugh. And then he'd get out of that mood, and he'd be happy all day. That's who I lived with, was your grandpa. I don't know how he did it some days when he didn't feel good, but he did. He was a good patient. And I had people coming in and out of my house constantly for 4.5 years to help take care of him. Hospice, they come all the time. If I ever needed anybody and he was choking or something I could call, they were there within 3 minutes. It was wonderful. Is that somebody I know here about the same time? I moved in, let's see, I moved in first, and then about 2 months later she moved in. I came in on my own, so I was content being here. I met her, and she was the most angry person I've ever seen in my life. She was mad. Her kids had taken her out of her home and put her in here. Well, she'd been in the hospital, and they thought she'd died. She didn't, so they put her in here. They took and had her sign everything over to them while she was still kind of sick and not knowing her own head. And so they own everything she had. And she's so mad because she got put in here, and they're paying for it out of her money, but she has no control over anything. She has to ask for money to spend at the store. And she's so mad. She was so angry. My kids didn't do that. I come in here and they thought I was nuts. Right? They thought, what's wrong with our mother? But when I came back from Salt Lake, I was asked to work at Sunshine Terrace in the Relief Society. You know, at first we were there maybe 1 day, and then 2 days. We were there 5 days a week before I quit, helping take care of people and loving them. And those old people need so much hugging and somebody just to talk to. And so we would go there as a presidency. None of us had to work. We were all free little spirits. Bruce went golfing. I went to that down there. But I was there for 4.5 years when Bruce got sicker, and so I had to quit. But actually we all got, it was time for us to get released anyway. But I learned to love old people. So when I was thinking about, okay, what do I do with my life now? I'm not going to stay in my house anymore. I can't stay in my house anymore. I've got to do something. So if I need help, I've got it instantly. And all my kids told me I could live with them. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. But after working in Sunshine Terrace, and I loved those old people. At first it was really hard to go in there, the smell. Everything bothered me. But after being there about 2 months, I fell in love with all the people, and it didn't matter. And I felt like that since. It's like, so when I thought about going anywhere, I thought, I can live here and be happy around all these old people. I have to laugh at them, and I think some of them are a little silly. Some of them don't know what they're talking about. But you know what? I worked with people like that at Sunshine Terrace for so long. 4.5 years was a long time. And we were going there almost every day to make sure everybody was okay. We'd walk in, oh, well, our family's here again. They start calling us our family. Nobody comes to see as much as you do. But we did. We visited there a lot. We had time on our hands. I wasn't working. Bruce was golfing. And the other ladies were widows. So we had all the time in the world to do anything. And that's what we did for 4.5 years. Was, hey, can you go to Sunshine Terrace today? Yeah, I'll go. That's what we did. But then we decided we've got to stretch this out a little more and do something different. So then we decided, okay, we go to Sunshine Terrace in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we are going to take our tablecloths, and when we come out of there, we would go to the temple and do a session and then go home. And that's what we started doing for all those years. We would go as a presidency, and it was fun just to have your friends go to the temple with you and be there and enjoy it. That's my life. Did I have a good life? I think I did. If not, I tried. We love going to Yellowstone. Did I ever tell you that? From the time we got married, Bruce wanted, he said, I love going to Yellowstone. I've only been there once, but I like going there to fish. He was a fly fisherman, and he loved to fish on the Salmon River because he didn't get his lines tangled up in the trees. So we would go up there every summer. Sometimes he would take his vacations in the summer, and he built up so he had good vacations. We could go 2 weeks, and then we could go 2 more weeks if we want. And we went summers all the time to Yellowstone. And the kids, he taught them how to fly fish. Now, Douglas wasn't very old. He was just out in the water about that far, standing on a rock with hip boots on. I mean, I got pictures. It was so funny. And Todd, he'd go out further because he was taller and stand on something. And Bruce would say, whatever you do, don't get off this rock. If you fall down, get back on the rock, and I'll come get you. And then he'd go upstream fly fishing. But he was always watching them. I was sitting on the bank watching them. And that's what we did. The kids learned how to fly fish, and they loved going fishing with their dad. It was amazing. But we all enjoyed it. I loved sitting out and taking a good book and reading. I lounged a lot on my vacation, other than when I had to cook over that open fire. Do you know how happy I was when we finally got a little stove? Oh, saved my life. But we cooked over an open fire for a lot of years before we got one, because we had to buy a tent first to sleep in. And so we had it all lined out. We got to get this first, because this is what we have to keep covered, da-da-da. So we bought it as we went along. But golly, we went up there until Todd was 19, every year. And he woke up that morning and said, I'm old enough to stay home by myself, and I'm not going. Okay? And I looked at him and said, then none of us are going. I thought he'd change his mind, but he didn't. He was as stubborn as us. So I called Bruce and says, we're not going on this trip. And that's when our trips kind of blew apart a little, when our kids got older. But Todd was, if he made up his mind, you didn't coax him. And he's still like that. He knows the right way or the wrong way. He doesn't know in between. Doug's a giver. He's a little of everything, and he's so easy to get along with. Isn't your dad easy to get along with? He is. I always called him my child that I could hug forever. Anyway, then Randy come along, and he's a little bit of everybody. Demanding. Yes, I am going to do it. He was in his junior year. He went to a party with some friends. They're going to die if you play this part. About my kids. He went to a party with his friends. He had curfew at 11 o'clock, and I reminded him, he said, Mother, I know that. You don't have to tell me that in front of my friends. Well, I thought I'd better, 11 o'clock come, 12 o'clock come. No, Randy showed up at my doorstep. I knew where they were. So about 1 o'clock, I get in the car, and I drive down to the house, and there's the car he went in, whosever car it was, one of his friends. Yep, they're still there. Went and knocked on the door, asked for Randy. Mad. I've never seen a child so mad. Randy, you were supposed to be home. Since you didn't come home, I came to get you. Two of the boys jumped up out of their seats and said, I'm supposed to be home at 11 too, Randy. Can I ride home with your mom? And I don't know what happened to the other kids. They never even said hello to me. But I took him home. And he was mad at me for over a week or more. Angry. Gary, you come down and take me out. I'm old enough to be out on my own. Well, he was a big kid. Yeah, he could take care of himself. That wasn't the rule. But guess what? The next time he went out, he said, now, Mother, please don't come get me. If I'm going to be late, I'm going to call you. You answer the phone. Okay? And he did. If he was going to be late after that, he would call me and I'd say, okay, I'll give you a half an hour to get home. And within a half an hour, that kid had come in my driveway. He didn't want me to come get him anymore. I'm sure. How would you feel if your mother stepped in and says, is David here? He's ready to go home. Send him out.
I can imagine.
I was a strict mom in a lot of ways, but you know, Bruce was out of town half the time, and I had to make rules for them to follow, or I would have been up the creek without a doubt, especially when I went back to work. When Todd walked in one day and he announced that, Mom, I'm going to go on a mission. I think I've said that before, maybe not. I'm going to go on a mission. I says, oh, that's wonderful. Bruce, come home, and Bruce, I got to go get a good job. Todd's going on a mission. We have no money. And he agreed to it. And then we had little Chris. She was 3 years old at the time. And I got my good neighbor, LaDawn Foster. You know her. She's passed away now in Mill. But they were our best of friends forever. And she agreed to help take care of Chris while I went back to work. And then I was lucky enough to get back on in Logan at the telephone company. So it all worked out, and we had money to keep Todd. Then Doug went out, so on and so forth, and everything.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
The craziest thing I ever done. I don't know if I dare tell this one. It was pretty bad. In my senior year, we had a boy in the ward that his dad bought him a boat. Well, we just had to go a little ways up over the hill into Twin Lakes to go water skiing. And I knew how to water ski. I'd gone water skiing before. But when they asked me to go, I thought, this is going to be so fun, because they had a whole group going, just kids in the neighborhood. And it was so much fun. Maybe I shouldn't tell this one. It's kind of embarrassing. But anyway, I'll tell some of it. Anyway, it was called Twin Lakes for a reason, because you had to know the lake. One side, you could do all you wanted on both sides, anything. But there was a small canal that took you from one lake to the other. I don't know if you've been to Twin Lakes over where I used to live. And there was a short, that if you went through that part of it, through the canal, it was rough, no matter how you tried to go through it. Well, we were young kids. We were water skiers. We knew how to do everything, right? So everybody says, we was there as a group, and okay, today we're going to go through the channel, and we're going to see who makes it all the way through. Okay? So we all had our turn. Not a lot of us made it through the channel. We got dumped, and the boat would go back and pick us up and stuff. But I remember when I got on it, they says, oh, she knows how to water ski real well. We're going to hit the gas hard. And I thought, no, not going through the channel. But, you know, I thought, whatever, I can handle this. Well, halfway through the channel, it dumped me. And I went. And when it hit me just right, that it knocked me off my skis. I lost my hand grip, and I went down. I remember going down, down, down. And the next thing I remember, I was laying on the bank. They got me out of the water and got me over to the bank and was trying to wake me up and get me awake. And I was coughing. I thought I was going to die. But I won't tell you what happened to my clothes. As I went down, I got stripped off. I was naked. Here's all my friends. My friend boys, they saw me. But anyway, they pulled me out, and I was laying on the side of the canal. They pulled me out. They didn't think they were going to get me out. Two of the boys started diving in to see if they could get me out and find me. And then finally, I guess I popped up, and they grabbed me and immediately loaded me on the boat and took me to the bank. I had not one thing on, nothing. I mean, here's all these boys my age. What would you think, David? You're not going to take that. But anyway, they finally got me to come around. They were scared to death to take me home to my mother because I wasn't acting right. But they also went back out, and my clothes were floating on the top of the water, and they brought them in, put them on me. The girls that was there, they had me covered up, but I thought, somebody had to get me out of the water. This is embarrassing. But anyway, oh, now you heard the funny part of my life. That was funny. It wasn't funny, it was real. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I don't know how long I was out. They don't have any idea. They were frantic by the time I finally tried to move. Move your hand, move your finger. I could hear them, but I guess I didn't respond. But eventually I started coming around. So I didn't die, I'm still here. I've had so many mishaps in my life, I should have been dead a long time ago. Call me a daredevil or something, I don't know. But it was fun. I even got invited to go skiing with them more. And I went. Oh, did you like my story?
Yeah.
I didn't know which one to tell. I've got a lot of them.
Got more crazy stories?
I've got crazy stories. Well, are we done?
If you want to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to?
I think we covered the whole
Tell us.
thing, didn't we? Did you ask me all the questions?
Yeah.
And did I answer them right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no right or wrong, right?
Nope.